is your blueprint. And so as we go through a couple of themes, I want you to take some time out when you have a moment and think about what your career pyramid will look like. So you can take that off the screen for now, and we can go back to my view, but you're gonna get your own pyramid, and I just wanted to show that to you so we can understand how that works. But in the chat box, I asked you a question earlier about, you know, where kind of the current state of your career right now. And some of you said that it's where you kind of want it to be. Some of you said could be better. Some said next question. Write one word in the chat that would make it better for you. What is that thing that would make it better, that would enhance that? So I'm seeing alignment, CEO, equity, belonging, support, clarity, yes, community, inclusion. So keep that, write that down. I want to see if those are some of the same things that at the end of our time together, if those are still the things that are important to you or that you feel would help you move forward to your seat. But the first thing I talked about was that mindset, understanding. One of the things that I tell myself a new story every day about myself, because for 15 years, I was in an environment where I was the only one. And so there's certain stories and certain narratives that start to seep in, and it starts to take control of how you sometimes see yourself, right? So even right now, as companies who are making commitments to Black employees, maybe prior, you might not have seen those things, right? And now if you get the opportunity, you might wonder, is this just because of this or whatever have you? But the reality is, if you get an opportunity right now, the main thing is not to question why they've given it to you, because it's probably something that you already should have had last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So what matters most is what you do when you get that seat. And so we really have to unlearn some things. So the number one is our mindset. Securing our seat is in the mind, right? So when you get that opportunity, don't question, oh, is this affirmative action 5.0? Listen, that's not for you to decide. You have the role now, and you have to decide how you're going to use your voice, right? How you're going to bring other women of color, other Black women along for the ride with you. So remember that empire state of mind. When that imposter syndrome starts seeping in, you tell yourself a new story. The story that I told you of the phrase from Audre Lorde, beware of feeling like you're not good enough to deserve it. Why not you, right? I recently had an opportunity come my way, and I said to a friend of mine, I said, wow, I can't believe they asked me to do this. And my friend said, Minda, why wouldn't they have asked you to do this? And I'm like, you dang gone right. Why shouldn't they have asked me, right? And sometimes we have to tell ourselves that. We have to remind ourselves that, yes, and even if the powers that be don't see that right now, doesn't mean that I'm not where I'm not that person that I need to be, right? So again, telling ourselves that new story, because again, we've been inundated with so many things, especially right now. Many of us used to be in a traditional work environment, and you may have experienced microaggressions or macroaggressions, depending on what day it was, or racism. And one thing you used to tell yourself is, man, I can't wait till I get out of here and go home, right? That was like your space. That was like your place where you could feel like you had a little reprieve. And now you're at home, many of us, and you're dealing with microaggressions while you're sitting on your couch, while you're sitting in your bed, while you're doing all these things. And so it's very hard to tell yourself that new story when you're inundated with all of these things that come your way. So it's so important that we tell ourselves that new story, because when we tell ourselves that enemy state of mind story, then it takes us further and further away from securing our seat. And so the next thing I want to tell you, once you, whatever that is, I wish I had more time to dig a little bit deeper into it, but create those guardrails to help you, if it's affirmations, if it's scriptures, if it's building up your squad, whatever those things are that you need to do when that story, that old story, that as James Baldwin says, the lie, when the lie tries to come your way, that you denounce that thing, that you don't have to accept it. Imposter syndrome has no space to go where you're headed. And so we cannot take that old way of thinking with us, because when we're at the table, that will consume our minds. And I don't want that for you, right? We have to create that space so that we can move in our purpose in the workplace, whether it's at the table you're at now, you're creating your own, or it's the next one. But I don't want you to, as Erica Badu said, bag lady, you know, we pick up a lot of trauma along the way in the workplace. And sometimes we take that baggage with us. We take those old stories with us. I remember I had one boss who would always call me incompetent. but yet I was the first person that he would come to when he needed something done, when he had a big client project. And I started to believe that about myself. And I was very young in my career, and I had to retell myself a new story about myself, because if we let those lies seep in, it's definitely going to be a problem. And so I just want to remind you to tell yourself that new story. And I am beating it like a dead horse, because I think so much of it is in that mindset, especially when we've been in certain environments. Number two, the thing I want to talk to you about is on securing our seat is your why. And I think oftentimes, I alluded to it, is we've been told for so long what our why should be. And the one thing that I want you to think about when you're looking at the pyramid in two ways, what are those things that you need in your career as you're building it? So if the bottom is the foundation, what are those things that you need out of your career that are at the foundation as you work your way up? So you might think of that pyramid that you all will have access to in two ways. You'll think about maybe the titles that you want to have. So if maybe you're a director right now, VP, C-suite, what does it look like to build your career? What investment do you need to make? What relationships do you need to make to be able to funnel that up? But the other part of it is understanding what you want out of your career. So number one, your needs. What are your career needs? For me, I used to think that I needed a six-figure salary and I needed the title. Not to say that I still don't need those things, but why did I need those things, right? Because the thing of it is, I was making six figures in my former life, but I had a manager that wasn't invested in my success. So it made my work day very difficult, right? So yes, I could go to, I lived in Los Angeles at the time. I could go to Mexico, a couple times a year, and that was great. But me and my girlfriends were talking about our jobs, I mean, not necessarily in the most productive of ways. And so I really had to get clear on what my why was, right? So when I talk about money, it's still important to me. That's the bottom of my pyramid. But I need those things so that I can, now I live in New York, so I can pay my bills, right? There's certain people who depend on me, so that might be one thing. But then the other part of it is I like to give to nonprofit organizations. So, there's a lot of amount of things that I like to do with my money, and I can't do that if I'm going after things that don't give me my basic level of career need, right? So for me, that's money. You have to figure out what it is on your foundational level, right? The next thing that I knew as I'm working my way up the pyramid, the other thing that was really important to me was feedback in the workplace, right? And some people don't need feedback. Tell me what I got to do, I'll do it, cool. But for me, I realized that I wasn't my happiest because my manager never told me if I did a good job or if I didn't do a good job, right? So for me, I knew that other part of my pyramid was feedback. I needed that feedback loop. So as you're going and looking for new opportunities, or you're looking to enhance the opportunities that you have at your companies right now, think about what it is you want and what you need, right? And oftentimes we might say, oh, I need another job, and that may be true, but you also might have to figure out what your needs are so that you get a little bit closer. Does that make sense? Okay, everybody still with me? So I think once we get down to what's important to us, that's basically what I want to ask, is what's important. The next part of that why is your happiness. What are the roles in which you like? What makes you happy when you do the job, right? So for example, if you're not an analytical person, why would you apply for jobs that have a very large analytical part of the job function, right? If public speaking is a large function of the job, unless you're trying to push yourself, why do you keep going after those things that you don't like to do, right? And so again, when we don't understand what exactly are our career needs and our wants, and the reason why I tell you, it's not just to make a laundry list of things, it's so when we talk about the next point, self-advocacy, you understand what you're advocating for. Because that's part of it, right? When someone asks you what they need from you or how can they be helpful, when we don't understand what it is we need and what our wants and whys are, then we may not have the answer that they need, right? And right now, I want you, what is that saying? You don't have to get ready if you're already ready, right? You already have your asks, you already have your career needs. And so the other thing is, what are the type of jobs that make you happy? What type of functions make you happy? So think about those things. If you're not an Excel person, and yes, you can invest in yourself and learn how to do the pivot tables and all that fancy stuff. But if that's not the things that are bringing you joy, figure out what those things are. And it may sound simple, but the older, I don't know about you, but the older I get, I don't want to waste a bunch of time, right? You know, Jay-Z, he has this prophet that I listen to on occasions, Jay-Z, he says, I rather die enormous than live dormant. And I want you to think about that in terms of your career. Are we doing the things that allow us to live enormous within our career context, right? We spend so much time in our careers at work. And so I want you to make sure you're doing the things that bring that that enormous living, that abundant living, right? Not doing the things that you're like, whew, when is it, 6 o'clock, right? I think we've all been in those spaces, right? And so how do we create, and I'm not saying that not every environment is going to be, you know, everything you ever want it to be, but if you think about, you know, what are the 3 to 5 things that I would really like right now in my career, figuring out how to get that. And the other part of it is you also then know if you ask your manager, so let's say your manager, if you're lucky, you have a manager who's invested in your success, but if not, then if they don't have an agenda, you have to set the agenda, right? You have to set the agenda. And part of setting the agenda is understanding your why, right? Understanding what you're asking for, what's on your career trajectory, or in the book, The Memo, I talk about your career blueprint. And so I just wanted to set that out. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about was your timeline. I think it's really important that we hold ourselves accountable for the things we say we want, right? And again, I know that in COVID-19, things may look a little bit different, but let me tell you, people are still getting promotions. People are still getting new jobs. Why not you, right? They're getting new opportunities. And so we have to really figure out what is the timeline, right? So for example, a lot of companies, again, are making commitments to their Black employees. As you get closer to defining what your career needs are, this gives you the opportunity to go to who you need to go to within the company and say, hey, I know that you've said X. And one of the things that you said is that you want to put more Black women into leadership roles. Actually, that's part of my career plan too. You know, I'd love to have a conversation about that, right? Like, this is what they said, right? This is what they've committed to. So you want to put yourself out there in that way. And so, you know, thinking about those things, your timeline, if you know that you want to be in the C-suite by the end of your career or mid-career, whatever it is, then what are those steps? What are those things that you need to do right now to make sure you're getting there, right? What's realistic? What's a stretch? But understanding that pyramid, right? How are we working our way up the pyramid? So again, you're thinking about it from your personal career needs, but you're also figuring out how do you align it with the company maybe that you're already at, or one that's all that you've been eyeing, right? So understanding, and two, the other thing I want to tell you about is that when you figure out your career needs and your why and your happiness and all those things, when you're even interviewing for your next role, you'll ask better questions, right? How many times have we gone into a situation and we're like, darn, I should have asked this about that. Now I'm in the situation. And granted, you're not always going to know everything by asking questions, but I have found that in some of places that I've been in my previous life, that had I asked certain questions, I probably would have shed less tears, right? You know, I probably would have scraped less knees, right? I would have known what fires to stay away from. And so as you're figuring out what your career needs are, you'll be better suited to position yourself up that pyramid. So I want you all to hopefully commit to, you know, thinking through what that's going to look like. And so lastly, really fast, because I want to make sure that we have time for some Q&A, if that's okay with you. The last thing I want to talk to you about is that self-advocacy. What I found is one of the best gifts of self-love is self-advocacy. And what I mean by that is nobody can advocate for you like you can. Nobody knows the work that you've done to get to this point like you. And so one of the things that I realized in my career, and I still even currently, is while I'm working really hard with my head down, all these other things are happening, right? And maybe the right people didn't know what I was up to because I wasn't articulating my value and quantifying my worth. So I can have all these great master plans, but if I don't communicate them to anybody, then it may take me longer to achieve that pyramid goal, right? And so the other thing I want to remind you is success is not a solo sport. We can do all the things by ourselves, but we're really going to need a squad of people to help us manifest that thing, right? And so part of that too is, don't think just because you're not in a physical environment that the manifestations are not happening. I've had some of the best moments of my career sitting in the spot you see me sitting right now, right? My goals still happen. They just might look a little bit different, right? I get to redefine what success looks like at this time period, right? And as I hone in on what my needs are, and not somebody else's version of success, but my version of success. And once you hone in, you may even find, you know what? I don't even know if I want to be in the C-suite. I'm actually okay being an individual contributor here at VP level or director level, right? You know, again, understanding what it is you want out of your career, not based off of what you think you should be doing. And that's a lot of power. And so again, self-advocacy is that form of self-love. If you're doing all the things, I want people to know that you're doing it, right? So what does that look like in a virtual environment? Part of that is when you can, I know we're not all able to do it, but show your face on camera, right? If you're not in the office and people can't see you anymore, this is how they see you. This is how you're able to make those rounds, right? And so we don't want people to forget about you because you're doing all this awesome work. But sometimes, and this is just can I keep it real with you? The reality is sometimes our counterparts, they need to see our face, right? We can be doing all the things, they can run all the reports, but at the end of the day, sometimes they have to see our face. And on those moments when you're not able to show your face, show up in the chat box, right? Don't let anybody take those moments away from you. And I really like the chat box in this environment because if you're one of those people that don't really feel comfortable right now speaking out into, you know, the Zoom atmosphere, use that chat box. That chat box is your BFF, right? That allows you to still participate in the conversation, still reminding people that, oh yeah, that girl, she's still here, right? She has ideas, you know, and so use the resources, use the tools in the virtual environment. And then two, when you think about networking, and I talked about who success is not a solo sport. Listen, you might not have been able to knock on the executive's door in a past environment, but you sure can slide into a private messenger instant message, okay? So listen, strategy. I'm not just saying slide in just to say, hey, no. But you know, these are the opportunities that you can still ask for those 15-minute virtual coffees, right? Everything is new right now. And so you, as you know, we often say, you have to shoot your shot. Like, we are the prize. And especially right now, people want us in these various roles, right? And so it's really important that we hold ourselves accountable to making sure that those people know that we're what we want. And so I just want to remind you that that self-advocacy piece is so great, because you can have all the skills, you can do all the things. I can send you 10 ways on how to secure your seat, but at the end of the day, if you don't activate that thing, we'll be having this conversation again this time next year. So I really want you to take control, figure out what it is you want. Can you launch the last poll for me, please? Again, I apologize that we're kind of speeding through this a little bit, but hopefully you're taking some nuggets along with you. This last poll, I know I've kind of said a few things, but will you consider centering yourself before the end of this year and asking for what you want? There's a yes, there's a maybe, and there's a no. You say, okay, Minda, get out of my business. And I understand what that's about, but I'm hoping that you will at least consider what centering yourself looks like right now. Okay, I don't know how long people are going to want to talk about racial equality in the workplace. I mean, I hope for the rest of our careers, but you and I both know that there's waves of this thing. And so it's very important that these are the times that we use it. We quantify our value, articulate our worth, we secure our seat, whatever that looks like for you. And so we have 90% yes, maybe yes. Okay, good. Nobody said no. I appreciate that. That makes me happy, because you all have done so much work, and I don't want you to lean out now, right? I don't want you to lean out now. There's so many positions and opportunities that are awaiting us to activate in some spaces. And so I just want to remind you that, A, it starts in your mind, right? Oftentimes people will say, well, what about if people don't want me in the room or whatever have you? And one of the stories that I tell myself is that I belong in every room I'm in, but not every room belongs to have, deserves to have me in it. And it's a mindset shift, you know what I'm saying? And so I'm no longer can concern myself with others, but making sure that I'm centering myself. And so the story that I tell myself is something new every day. And hey, on some of those hard days, I might be telling myself a new story every hour. You know, there's a lot going on in the world right now. And so I want you to remember that. Number two, your career needs. You've worked very hard to curate and place brick by brick what it is in your career. And I want to make sure that when you end or retire or transition into your next career opportunity, that you get the things that your ancestors worked very hard. We are direct beneficiaries of their courage. And I want you to be courageous in your pursuit to your goals, right? I used to be deathly afraid of speaking up in public. And one of the things that I knew that the people around the table, they activated their voices. They use their voices. And I realized if I'm going to change the way that the workplace works, if I'm going to make the workplace better than I found it, then it's going to require me to act.
Hello, hello. Can anyone hear me? I lost audio as well. Someone said that in the chat. All right, great. So we did lose audio, but we are so grateful and thankful to Minda for all of the jewels and the nuggets that she shared with us. I mean, there were so many. Someone in the chat was saying earlier that it's hard for us to keep up when we're writing down Fast and Furious. And so I was doing the same thing. One of the things I love that Minda shared was imposter syndrome has no place where you're headed. And that absolutely stuck with me. And I will make sure that I take that mindset and really retell myself a new story every time. So thank you so much, Minda. We were going to have some Q&A with her, but I think right now what I would love to do is give out another registration to the Mid-Level Managers Symposium while we take a little bit of a segue. So I want to know in the chat, who has attended the most ELC events? So that would be from ELC as well as the Institute. Go ahead and put it in the chat. Let me know how many events you've attended. Nellie, this is your first. Welcome, and I hope it's going to be the first of many. Anyone else? Ooh, I see 5 from Kiwanda. Let me hold that on. Kimberly is also a first. 5 also from Darice. Okay, let me see. Kiwanda and Darice, you guys are, I hope I'm not butchering names, but you guys are neck and neck. So let me write that down. A lot of first timers in the room. This is actually my second. 5 from Tracy as well. Okay, all right. So I know that it is going to be the first. Siobhan Gordon shares over 10. Oh my goodness. And we have some other 5s. Fantastic. I love, love, love that you guys are, there's a lot of newcomers in the room and that some of you guys are coming back and back and back. So I think Siobhan really blew us out of the water with that one with the 10 events. We had a lot at 5. I want you all to keep going, keep growing, and making sure that you invest in yourself, as one of the other panelists had already shared with us. Capital One is definitely in the house. I do have to give a shout out. Several members of my own company, including Siobhan, over here representing. Hold on. We've got Phyllis Smith with 10 plus. That is just phenomenal, and a testament really speaks to the value and the fact that the ELC really is a gift that keeps on giving. I remember after my first event, I went back to my company and I was like, okay, how do I get to the next one? Like, that was my sole mission. So Phyllis, we're gonna give it up for you. Thank you so much. 10 plus events. You are now gonna be at the Mid-Level Manager Symposium. Also, we had a few other 10s. So thank you all for your participation in the chat. I do want to share with you guys that as we go through in the next speakers and the Q&A, we want to make sure that you are aware of the raise your hand function. So if you go to participants on the bottom of your screen, it will bring up the list of all 264 of you fabulous ladies. And you're able to hit the little blue raise your hand icon so that you can share your questions directly with the panelists or the speaker. We really want to have that level of engagement, not just in the chat, but face-to-face as well. And remember, being comfortable getting more visible is one of the takeaways that we have from today. So Minda Harts' book was called The Memo. The link has already been shared in the bio, and we'll probably get it shared again. So thank you to everyone for your continued engagement, participation. I am going to go on and move into our next phase. I have the pleasure of introducing Shannon Simon, who's a Senior Director, Learning Design and Innovation at AIG, our gracious sponsor once again, who is going to take us into the networking portion of today's event. So Shannon, you have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. First, let me just say hello and give a shout out to all of my fellow powerful women at work. I hope you all are enjoying this as much as I am, because the speakers and the energy I found just to be phenomenal. So this is just a great session. I want you to know, I truly do believe in the power of the collective, and the messages that we've received about building our own board of directors are so important. It's something that I have to remember all the time, and why I work on networking, because I used to be really, really good at making a connection. But for me, the challenge was continuing it, keeping it going, building that relationship over time. So as networking author Michelle Janae says, networking isn't just about connecting people to people, it's about connecting people to ideas and people to opportunities. And so it's those opportunities that we're going to create as this collective. And if we choose to seize on those opportunities, then I think we can make a difference for ourselves and for others. And so right now, I'm looking at the participants list, and there's over 260 difference makers on this call. So let's get connected. In this next session, what we're going to do is take time to network with one another. We keep hearing that theme throughout today. So let's take time to do it. What we want you to do is take a look at the participants list. You see a long list. If you don't have your full name showing on the list, please find your name at the top, click on it. There's a button that says rename so that you can enter your full name. I see many people already have their full names there. But then either on your cell phone or on another tab on your computer, go ahead and go to linkedin.com. And when you go to linkedin.com, we can type in the names of some of the people that are showing up here in our list and begin to connect with them. So I have just one slide. I don't know if you're able to show it. If not, I'll just give the directions. Perfect, thank you. When you're in LinkedIn, find at least 3 of the people out of the 260 difference makers on this call. Find them, do a search, look at their profile. When you pull up someone, connect. Click that blue connect button if you're not already connected with that person. It'll send it to pending. And then right next to connect is message. So you have the opportunity to send someone a message today. And what we want you to do is the subject of the message, put POW. You know, that's this event, POWW Connection 2020 as the subject, so that we all know why we're getting all of these connections and messages. And then take a moment. There's got to be one thing, maybe more, that connects you with someone else. At a minimum, us attending this event is something that is going to connect us. But LinkedIn also uses AI, and right underneath someone's name is a highlights box if you have anything else in common already. Maybe you went to the same school. Maybe you have other connections that can do an introduction for you. Maybe you have taken the same certificate program. Whatever it is, try to find something that you can relate to and share a little bit about yourself with at least 3 people that are on the call today. And the other thing is watch your messages, because as you are connecting, other people are connecting with you as well. And you can use this as an opportunity to accept those connection requests. And again, the connecting is the easy part. It's after this, taking all the advice that we've gotten and start to really build relationships. And it's slow, but it's definitely worth it. So you'll hear music in the background, and we're going to give you time to do just that. Go ahead and start connecting with one another.